It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.
It's been a long while since we've given you a sassy black chick that you can step to, but your prayers have been answered. Take that, Atheist. Hello, humans, and welcome back to another episode of The Nonprofits, the show where we discuss news and topics of the day from a skeptical humanist perspective. My name is Cynthia, and happy Black History Month. Today, I am joined by, all the way to my left, is Helen Greene. Hello, Helen. How you doing?
Good. Hello from the ether. I'm glad to be back here for another episode and the awesome new people. And I missed you, Cynthia, so it's great to be back.
I missed you too, Dollface. And next, but certainly not least-ish, I think. Well, we'll just go with that. Hey, Cindy, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Good to be here again.
Good to have you again. Cindy is the other Cindy. I go by Cindy too, but for the purposes of ACA stuff, she's Cindy and I'm Cynthia. Right, Cindy? Yeah, okay. Cindy
Yeah.
says yes. And then we have a guest with us. Is it Jordan, Reason to Doubt?
That's me. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Before we get into everything, Jordan, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you come to us here on the Nonprofits?
Sure. I'm an atheist, obviously, and I run the podcast Reason to Doubt with a buddy of mine. He's a theologian. I'm a nuclear engineer, and we talk about skepticism stuff. And good friends. I got here via student Dr. Ben, who hooked me up with your fine group of folks. So, yeah, that's why I'm here.
Well, shout out to student Dr. Ben, who will be soon Dr. Ben. And thank you for the connection. Well, welcome, Jordan, and I hope that this is going to be one of many appearances on the Nonprofits.
I agree.
Yes, we obviously do not have enough nuclear engineers in host shows.
There aren't a lot of us.
And not enough bow ties as well.
Exactly, and yes, that it for our podcast people. If you're not seeing the bow tie, it is smoking. I just want to let you know right now. So, let's go ahead and get into it, guys. Is that okay? Cool. Cool. Well, before we get into it, I have some, contractual obligations like this one. This show is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Okay, end of that particular contractual obligation. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Shall we talk about what we're going to talk about? Yes, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Today, we're going to talk about, in our first segment, we have a Pope Watch, which is Francis says that homosexuality is not a crime. Yay. Segment 2 is Satan versus the religious right. I just like to say that I am rooting for Satan. Segment 3 is Drag Story Time, a crime? And then in our last segment, looking back, we're going to talk about Black History Month and the Black Atheist Tax. And as with all of our shows, links to today's topics and the news we discuss are available in the description box below. And a reminder that if you want to come in the show prepared, you can check out the Nonprofits Facebook fan page every Friday night for a list of the articles ahead of time. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it, folks. And we have a Pope Watch. And Helen, you are taking us in.
Yes, I am. So, welcome to Pope Watch, everybody. Do. So, said that it's full, I guess, that homosexuality isn't a crime. And I can't help but fear, and I said this before about, whenever popes start talking about queer people or they start, putting their 2 cents in about these sort of issues, that he's kind of doing the bare minimum here. He doesn't want queer people to be harmed, yet again, under God's law, still inflates it to be sinful behavior. So he obviously thinks that God's law, and I'm doing my quote, can't see me all, but I'm doing my quote because it is beyond human law. So God's authority ultimately wins out when we're talking about these issues. I do appreciate, though, that he does want queer people to be treated with dignity. As he said, we are all children of God, and God loves us as we ask for his strength, that each of us fights for our dignity. That's so nice. So nice. Though, for someone that is an unbeliever, like myself, I could get 2 cracks what somebody's sky daddy says. But I know for a lot of believers, they need that assurance from the decent human being. Okay? But also, as someone who's queer, I take offense to someone to perceive me as sinful, even wrapped in support and wishing no harm to me, not only to myself, but people in my community. And I've said this before, until queer people are treated with dignity, equality, and respect within religious structures, these sort of platitudes and nice little words doesn't mean crap. So, Cindy, how do you feel? Tell me what you think about this Pope lady.
So yeah, I will let the other hosts talk about the hypocrisy of this position, and I will focus on something different that you alluded to. Um, what I find interesting here is that the Pope somehow admits that it's something that very few theists in the U.S. admit, that humans' law are above God's law. You say that you said the opposite because he still thinks homosexuality is a sin, but he says everyone should obey the law and the law should be changed. So basically, he's saying that humans' law are more important than God's laws, and that's new because it contradicts pretty much everything the church has done so far, including shielding pedophile priests from justice, moving them around, avoiding any consequence. But for what it's supposed to be, the representative of the Catholic God on earth, it sounds rather counterintuitive. I'm curious to see how this is going to unfold in the future, but I think it's an interesting position. Uh, Although most of the theists in the U.S. are Protestants, and so they don't listen to the Pope. Um, yeah, I think it's still interesting in this point of view. Jordan?
Yeah, so obviously, I think this is a good thing. It's great that the Pope is recognizing the humanity of homosexuals and saying that they should be treated with dignity and respect, which seems pretty obvious to me, but it's nice that he says so. And I think we can celebrate this as a win while still recognizing the problematic nature of the Catholic Church as an organization. But this is just more evidence of the trend where Christian morality tends to lag behind the morality of the society in which it finds itself in. Like today's hard bitten, like right wing conservatives were yesteryear's, soft hearted liberals. So this is just more of that same trend. But I mean, it is still a good thing, because even though the Pope doesn't carry a ton of weight in America, it's still his word carries a ton of weight elsewhere. And so hopefully this will shift the actions of the Catholic Church more broadly, and perhaps at least make them an ally in fighting for decriminalization and equal treatment. And even if they think it's still sinful, which, I mean, that's not great, it's better for you to think it's sinful and think it should be decriminalized than to think it should be criminalized, right? So at least it's a positive step. Cynthia, what do you got?
Well, I don't know if we can equivocate this to Jesus's gospel saying that render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and render unto God, which is God's. As far as like the criminality portion of being queer goes. But, you know, I kind of take this as, you know, the Pope saying that homosexuality is not a crime, just like priests saying that age ain't nothing but a number. And I suppose we can call this a step in the right direction. I don't know if I should actually start singing "Step in the Right Direction," but my whole issue specifically with the Catholic Church is that laws, like actual human laws, have been made and used because of saying something is a sin. That's my issue. And unfortunately, the idea of homosexuality being a sin is not just a sentiment on the Catholic Church. Other Christian groups and other theistical groups actually share this sentiment as well, and in some cases have created laws depending on whomever is in charge in said country or whatever, based on that sentiment. And as much as like we have people that are leaving the Catholic Church and leaving Christianity, the the institution in of itself still carries weight, and what the leadership says still carries weight. So I guess good on Pope Francis for recognizing that people living their lives is just humanity and it should not be something that is a sin. But I don't know. I'm not to the point where I'm celebrating that much because especially of the Pope's past. But Helen, if you can chime in, and then Cindy on this, please.
I also want to kind of elaborate on the fact that, the Catholic Church is acting like their child molesting crap doesn't stink. And then
Right.
going around and telling, people in the queer community who haven't done anything illegal as a group, as a whole, really, there's outliers, we all know that, but calling a whole group of people, not sinful, sinful, but they're still protected in the law when they're, you know, are being kind of hypocritical, and the things that they have done are much, much worse. So that's the hypocrisy just smells really, really bad. And I just have a problem when people start throwing their poo like a bunch of monkeys at another marginalized group when they've done things that are demonstrably and horribly terrible. So that's kind of my kind of opinion. What do you
Yeah,
think,
I
Sydney?
wanted to come back to what Cynthia said a minute ago, and talking about this contradiction about saying something is a sin, then make laws on this because it's a sin, and then years later saying, oh no, it's not, it should be illegal anymore. We have to remember that there are still 19 countries in the world where being gay is warrants death penalty, and most of them are in Africa, and most of them are theocracies. So I'm not sure the Pope's message will have the weight it should have, because if you don't remove the foundation for the law, which is the idea that homosexuality is a sin, then I don't see those countries taking that away just because the Pope says so. if it's still a sin, then keeping the law is justified in their eyes. So, yeah, I, I don't think it will matter that much.
The Pope is saying something kind of almost secular, though, because while he's saying, I think it's wrong, we shouldn't legislate based on what I think is wrong, which that's a good thing, right? Even if it would be even better if he didn't think it was wrong, because it's not. Nobody's getting hurt. What's the big deal? But simply having someone who's the head of religion saying we shouldn't be using religion to legislate, which is kind of the subtext of this statement, that's still kind of a silver lining too. It might help push some people towards more of a secular mindset, which would be good.
Yeah, I'm hoping that is the case, but as Cindy pointed out, we still have these other countries that are mostly theocracies that still carry homosexuality is a sin, therefore we should create laws against it. And I agree that no one should be making laws based on church leaders or any type of theocratic um, dictates. But unfortunately, as human beings, that's what we have done and we continue to see nowadays. But I wanted to ask you guys what you thought when Pope Francis said there needed to be a distinction between a crime and a sin with regard to homosexuality. The church teachings hold that homosexuality acts are sinful or intrinsically disordered, but that gay people must be treated with dignity and respect. So, if any of you all would like to, have like your, idea of what that is to you, I'll start with you, Helen, and then Cindy, and then Jordan. And I'm so sorry about my dog in the background.
Well, your dog has an opinion apparently. So anyway, I have it's complicated. At least someone who is queer and someone that is a former Catholic, because my view is I know that he's seeing a problem within religious communities of um, gay people and queer people being under attack, especially in countries where the laws don't protect them. And a lot of that comes from the teachings, the missionary work, which is another thing I talked about on this podcast. I think he's trying to realize that the world is moving on, and people that are believers need to have more compassion for people that are different than them. But again, when we're talking about sin, that is, it gives the idea to believers that people queer something that's gross, something that is against nature, something that is going to send you to hell. So it's nice that we have these he's trying to make these distinctions, and he wants people to share with more compassion, and he doesn't obviously want to see people thrown into prison or harmed for being queer. But again, when we're talking about sin, there is still that underlying implication that people like me and other people in my community, there's something wrong with us, and that is something that still gives me a lot of pause. And I know he's trying, and I appreciate that, but again, it's the implications of the things that he's saying. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, he also says in the article, and he said that several times in the past, he says that there are different levels of sin, different levels of gravity of sins. And to him, it seems that homosexuality is not uh, a big sin because, as you said, it doesn't hurt anyone. So this idea that there are different levels of sin, it I don't know how he can reconcile this with the idea of hell, because I never heard any theist say that some sins are okay and you won't go to hell if you sin those small ones, but only the big ones send you to hell. So what's the point behind this anyway? If it's a sin and because you sin you will go to hell, then what's the point of saying that some are more serious than others? I don't get it.
Yeah, I think if you hold to the doctrine of hell, which not every Christian does, I have some very progressive Christian friends who, think, yeah, everything will be fine. You're a good person, so you'll be okay. And that's great. But like, if you hold to the idea of eternal conscious torment, I also don't see how you can square the two. But I definitely see what Helen is saying. And while I've been focusing on the good part, there is a bad part too, that saying that someone is committing a sin others them, and it makes it you're even while you're giving the message that it shouldn't be punished by the state, you're still saying what they're doing is wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that there can be social costs to doing something that the society thinks are wrong, even if they are not illegal, right? And so his statement, while it does reduce the legal costs, it doesn't necessarily help reduce the social costs, which are just as bad, if obviously not as bad as getting your head cut off, but still extremely dangerous, right?
Well, thank goodness we're no longer in medieval times, right, Jordan? I think that was their answer to everything. Send them to the axe, burn them at the stake, and then during the Renaissance time, we had the guillotine and we just cut everybody's head off. Sorry, Marie Antoinette. But I like to go back to this whole thing specifically with the Catholics and their whole idea of the afterlife and sin and how that coincides with one another. So even though I was raised Episcopal, I went to Roman Catholic school for the majority of my life. And, Catholics believed in purgatory. So they had this level of sin idea. Like, okay, if you committed sin level A, and you didn't reconcile, you can go to purgatory for a little while and then get like purged from it, and then eventually you can go to heaven. And I think that that's the reason why and I know this is completely conjecture because I haven't had a conversation with Pope Francis lately, but I would assume that this is kind of his sentiment, saying that it's not hurting anybody. It's probably like level A sin, not necessarily level B or C. So they might have their stint in purgatory, can get purged, and then he go ahead to the pearly gates, talk to St. Peter, and then go have a little talk with Jesus and live the rest of their lives in that particular way. But it's still the idea that this is still considered wrong because it's sin is extremely problematic. And and we can't, and even though like I understand that he wants to change the narrative, kind of like how, let's say for instance, Mormons changed the narrative on who can inherit the priesthood based on what prophet is in power that year, right? It's still an issue because they have utilized their position as an institution to influence law. And because of that, and also mentioning the social cost, like a lot of times there is a social cost depending on the belief system that you hold. So this is even the reason why a lot of queer people, especially back in the day, would talk about how they had to have chosen families because they wanted to live their life according to their truth, and they were annexed from their family because of it. So that's my thoughts on it. I kind of just want to just give like a quick roundup for everybody before we go into our next segment. So Helen, if you can just give us a few words of your thoughts, then Cindy, and then Jordan, and we will move on.
I'm one of these people that believes in, find the positivity wherever you can find it. So if your perception is that the Pope is doing a good thing because he doesn't want harm coming to people, I think that is a good take to have. But keep in mind that, as Jordan was saying, there is a social cost that comes with this for people in our community. And I just hope that even and with Pope Francis, it is moving the needle a little. And I would like to see more of that happen, within religious communities to keep moving that needle forward. So I will take what I can get, even though what he's saying is still problematic, but I will take a tiny piece of hope, for him not wanting queer people to be harmed, because it does happen a lot. So I'll take whatever, I'll take it for what it is, even though it's very problematic.
Yeah, you know what? I think starting today, I'm going to pray to God that the Pope becomes irrelevant very, very soon.
Yeah. What the thing about all this to me is
Here.
the thing that about all this to me is that, like, it doesn't have to be this way, right?
Yeah.
I have Christian friends who are extremely caring and loving and, embrace the queer community. It doesn't have to be like this. And hopefully we are moving towards a situation where it isn't like this.
Well, let's all pray that Cindy's prayers are answered. Ah, goodness, because once these, and I want to one up you, Cindy, and say I'm praying that one day religious leaders have no influence on how laws are actually formulated. And because if that's the case, we wouldn't even be having an issue with Christian nationalism. So there you go. So, with that being said, thank you to our veteran and our new viewers for getting us over 11,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. Matter of fact, we are so close to 12,000 subscribers. So, if you are watching us now and haven't subscribed, get on that. And once you subscribe, hit the like button and ring that bell so you always know when a new Nonprofits episode premieres every Sunday at 3 p.m. Central Time. But you already knew that. And then share the link to our channel with your friends, your family members, your coworkers, that neighbor guy you don't really like, the neighbor guy that you do really like, and anybody and everyone. And let's get the word out so we can start helping those fundraisers. And are you aware that the atheist community of Austin has another YouTube channel? Are you? Well, you should be. So check out the Atheist Experience Network, a channel where you can find all ACA shows in podcast form. Subscribe at tiny.cc/AEN podcast to listen to episodes of the Nonprofits, the Atheist Experience, Secular Sexuality, and even some of the archive shows that we have, like Godless Bitches and AC and other ACA shows, so you don't miss a single episode. Okay, thank you. That particular portion should have gone a little bit smoother. Next time I'll write in my notes. So, going on, let's go ahead and move into the second segment. And I do believe, Jordan, this is all you. Let's talk about the Friends of Satan.
Yeah, so speaking of people using their religion to make laws, you may have recall that last year Roe v. Wade was overturned, due in large part to the continued action of the religious right in America. And since that happened, some groups have been working to reverse the reversal, and that group includes the Satanic Temple. You may know them from their fights to put statues of Baphomet outside of government buildings. They are arguing that this decision violates their religious freedoms. They say that abortion rights are part of their fundamental tenets of their religion, specifically that one's body is inviolable, subject to one's will alone. So they've filed lawsuits in a bunch of states, Indiana, Idaho, among others. Lucien Greaves, the co-founder of the Satanic Temple, is basically saying that he has to fight the system from within the system, and that's how the kind of strategy he's taking. He says in the article that we have to play the long game. Christians, they spent generations doing this, and so that's the strategy he's taking. So I'm curious what you think, Cindy, as to, like, will they be successful? Do you think that this is the best way to go about it?
I don't know. As I said just before we started the show, France is in the process right now of giving the right to an abortion and writing it down in the constitution, which is pretty great. But I wanted to specifically talk about a part of the article, and it talks about a group called Sovereign Citizens It's a loose group of Americans who do not believe they are under the jurisdiction of the federal government and are not subject to U.S. law. And so I studied a little bit this group. I went to their website, and their uh, I hesitate between crazy and interesting group. In late 2021, Greaves received a message from that group. They informed him that he was to be deported from the US despite being a US citizen. And after finding a Zoom link for a sovereign citizen assembly meeting, Greaves crashed the meeting, and as a consequence, they put a $100,000 bounty on his head. So I went to their website, and the page detailing the bounty is still here. You can go right now and read it. And so let me just read you a tiny bit of it. So it says, on Monday, 276th day of the year of Yahweh 6023 at 722 UCT -6 or around. And that already tells you a lot about them. Young Earth creationists, Christians, etc. Douglas Messner attempted a coup d'etat by striving to hijack the National Assembly for the government of the United States of America, which they think they are, in the capacity as General Postmasters of the original General Post Office of 1775. All members were throwing threats with the intent to place fear into the American nationals so they would back away from their official duties and hand the government over the terrorist organization. So, yeah, they're classified as a terrorist group by the FBI. But yeah, the bounty is still here. So Greaves had to move secretly. And so we were talking earlier about beliefs led by religious beliefs. That's what we get. Helen, did you want to add something?
Yeah. Yeah. So since June, I've had a lot of anxiety about the repercussions of Roe v. Wade being turned over. I did work with Recovering from Religion to get resources together for people to get access to abortion care or have their anxieties and questions answered, which gave me something to do about it. The fact that Lucien Greaves is doing something on the other side where he's actually trying to fight the law against the religious right, want to take people's rights away. And this is just the beginning of what irrevocable harm this can cause in the long run. But the fact that he's fighting against it is actually giving me courage. I do appreciate how he expressed his frustrations about how the people at the Satanic Temple, including himself, are focused on the right things versus the people that are their detractors are focusing on the wrong thing. They're focusing on the fact that they use Satan as a symbol. And Lucien Greaves even said, this gets to be really tedious because I think people aren't terribly invested in the outcome of the Satanic Temple's lawsuits. Because they just see the theatrics of it, they're not really paying attention of what they're actually trying to do, because they're trying to protect freedoms for everybody through the separation of church and state. And that also includes religious freedom. And I think, though I love what they're doing, the image of the temple is bearing the message of what they're going to do. And Greaves mentioned in the article about the danger and the stress he has felt as the face of the Satanic Temple. He is constantly fighting an uphill battle. I'm really excited because I get to meet him at Free Flow next month. So when I go, so I'm actually very excited about it. And I want to talk to him a little bit more about that in the future. And the Satanic Temple, to me, is an example of a microcosm of secularists fighting for civil rights and free expression in a country that actively pushes against those ideas. And since the religious right has infected the highest court in the land, it is even more imperative that secular groups fight to restore what the majority of Americans want. And I think that is where the focus should be. But I really appreciate that they're willing to, kind of fight the hard fight, because they are really fighting for that separation and using their advocacy and using Satan as a symbol of rebellion, which I love. But again, as he said, people lose. So, Cynthia, what do you think, honey?
Well, I think that unfortunately the message gets lost in the sauce because of the whole symbolism utilizing Baphomet as their symbol, right? You have the head of a goat in a man's torso with the goat portion at the bottom, and then instantly, especially with people who happen to be extremely like Christian or theistic leaning, and also on the right, get triggered by the symbol, but completely loses the messaging behind why we're using the symbol in the first place. I think that I mentioned on a podcast in the past, like, do you understand that if you are a Christian, and I lived as a Christian for almost 40 years of my life, so I get it, that you actually when you display a cross, you are displaying the capital punishment of your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I mean, do you understand that? And do you really think that that is okay? Like, would you, like, say for instance, if your mother or your father was like gone through capital punishment, would you actually use the symbol of that, so say that you love your mother and father? I don't think so. So that in of itself is an issue that one has to actually go through when they are looking at symbols, iconography, things of that nature. But but one of the things that I do applaud is their particular advocacy when it comes to what they're doing in order for them to try to get back into um, really talking about separation of church and state. And one of the things that I wanted to point out, and then Jordan, I want you to chime in after this. you know, there's this whole thing that they're specifically trying to do is use the system in order for them to actually get change. And usually people are wanting to go and say, hey, we need to work outside of the system in order for us to affect change. And the thing about it is I have a friend that says government is the game and politics is how you play it. And I remember specifically in the article him saying that, let me see if I can find it. He said, I get messages from people denigrating us for taking legal action to assert our rights, saying you can't change the system from within the system. And I keep asking them, what the fuck do you think you just saw happen? That's what we did. And I totally agree with this tactic. I think that in order for us to be able to change anything as far as as far as Roe v. Wade concerned, you're going to need legislation. If you talk about lately, I saw that in Congress, after the GOP took charge, they disbanded the congressional committee that talked about civil rights for voting rights. And you're seeing this happen over and over again. So voting matters, using your voice matters, actually working within the system to change things that you don't like matters. And I appreciate the Satanic Temple actually doing that. But when he says that, I am curious to know, especially with the wake of the Christian nationalists and them actually getting laws, pushing things that they want to get forward done. Jordan, what is your take on this?
Well, I was kind of torn when I was reading this article because on the one hand, I really appreciate the effort that they're going for, and obviously I support their goals, and it's clever using kind of the tools of the enemy against the enemy, not to everybody who's religious, but obviously this was an effort of the religious right over many decades, and they're using the language and tools of religion to try to influence the state, and that's a good thing. on the other hand, I would love to live in a world where we didn't have to put on the cloak of religion in order to enact change. Like this is Roe v. Wade was such a popular it had what 60-70% support across the board, which like nothing has that level of support. And so the fact that we have to play this game almost in order to get this extremely popular thing to work is extremely disappointing. But I fully agree with what you said, Cynthia, that ultimately, if we all work together, ultimately the votes are what are going to change the system. What do politicians care about? They care about power, and the way they stay in power is by getting voted in. And so if we stop them from getting voted in, then that's the way we're going to do it. So about to toss it over to you, Helen. I'm really interested what your take is on this, and what do you think? Like, how do you think they should move the ball forward?
I think that their public persona is a double-edged sword because it definitely gets eyeballs on them when they do dramatic displays of protests against things like against abortion, against queer rights, and they do public rituals, which definitely gets them in the news and definitely get a response, which is fantastic because you want that attention to go there. But again, as he said, the messages get lost in the theatrics. I think it's a very hard balance for what the Satanic Temple is doing. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, well, but he does a lot of interviews and he is the public face for the Satanic Temple, and he got invited on Fox News. So, his face is out there and he speaks up, and maybe out of like the millions of viewers watching Fox News, and he appears and he starts talking about the separation of church and state and what they're actually doing. And then if even 5 people are like, oh, I understand, and they start doing a little bit of research on what the Satanic Temple is doing, okay, I kind of want that. So it's really difficult, but at this point with Roe v. Wade being turned over, I'm kind of not going to be very picky about, who's going to be, taking up the mantle and fighting for equal rights. So, and for this barbaric law to be forced upon us, and now people that can bear children are scrambling and trying to figure out what they're going to do. At this point, I understand the frustrations, but also at the same time, I'm not caring at this point right now because there are bigger fish to fry. That's the kind of way I look at it. What do you think, Cindy?
I think you're muted.
Yeah, from the outside, I have a kind of a different perspective. I don't want to diminish his work because we haven't insisted enough on this, but the article talks in length about the stigma he's facing for his engagement. He, as we said, he had death threats. He has to move. He had to move. This took a heavy toll on him, and I want this to be said on record. On the other hand, I think that the image that the general public in the U.S. has about the Satanic Temple is a make-believe religion to attack other religions. And until this image doesn't go away, I'm afraid they won't be able to go very far unless they have very good lawyers. But that's a different topic.
Different lawyers are just different sentiments of society in of itself, because let's just face it, the symbolism that's behind the iconography of Satan is very triggering, especially to theists. But before we just wrap up and go on to our next segment, I just wanted to just say that, in my humble opinion, to look at the efforts of the Satanic Temple and to see that if they will make a change or not, one must consider that as much as we try to promote amiable discourse to come to proper understanding, that is not the commitment to every person or group. And I think that that's something that was very much so displayed when we started to see different laws that popped up before and after the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And so I believe that sometimes circumvention is absolutely necessary, but I think that the Satanic Temple utilizing what they can do um, within the sphere of politics is usually the way to go. Um, I wish them luck, because as a person with uterus, I am very, I'm very invested in this particular issue. And with that being said, I think that we need to take a break from our conversation, or we should take a break from our conversation. And if you did not tune into the ACA shows from last week, here is what you missed.
Like, is there a swimsuit competition? I know it's not Miss Universe.
Like 4 days of amazing gay leather pageantry.
Yes.
And I'm talking like down home.
Doing it.
Down home Texas pageant. Plus bear, plus gay.
And they were trying to reconcile modern quantum physics with Eastern mysticism. Okay. And they did a really good job of it, right? I mean, it was all bull, right?
Wait, so why did they do a good job of it?
Because they made it sound reasonable.
Okay, so in our second segment, just like Richard said, we're going to be traveling down to 1950s. I'm hearing from our producers it's actually Florida in 2023. Hard to tell the difference, my bad.
And they have to be match up perfectly.
Okay.
And when I'm looking at those two things, they match up perfectly.
Wow, that's great. Well, that's wonderful. I think you should tell NASA and then come back to us.
I'm not telling anybody.
But
you're telling
why
us?
are you telling us?
Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, guys.
Talk to you later. Bye. He called me young.
I wasn't going to say, really young. Can you provide some evidence of that claim? Because I don't see...
And we are back. And if you can arrange to be in the Austin area between Thursday, February 23rd and Sunday, February 26th, consider joining us in studio audience. Join us in studio audience at the ACA Free Thought Library for live broadcasts of Secular Sexuality, Truth Wanted, Talk Heathen, and the Atheist Experience. Doors open at 6 p.m. on Thursday and Friday, and noon on Sunday. Parking is where you can find a legal spot after the lot is full. And if you can't make it there this month, we will continue to broadcast live from the continue to broadcast live from the library and last week of each month. So keep watching this show and our website at atheist-community.org for news and information as we expand our in-studio offerings in the near future. And I actually can read. I just happen to sometimes get caught up in my lisp. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. So let's go ahead and go to our next segment. I believe, Cindy, this is all you. Take it away.
Yes, so we're talking about this article from Insider, which dates from about a week ago. And it talks about a bill proposed by GOP Kevin West in Oklahoma that will make it a felony for drag queens to perform in front of minors and a misdemeanor for those who organize the event. So this is it's part of a pattern that we've seen since well, let's say 10 years, but very much increased after the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And so it's big pile of nonsense. But before I get deeper into it, who's going to talk first? Helen, do you want to say something about it?
I can say lots of things. So this just all goes back to the religious right invading positions of power. So Representative John Cornell, bigot, is trying to have his cake and he's trying to eat it too. And with this bill, he has expressed his parents can choose between bringing their kids to a drag performance in a public venue, but it also has this like all drag shows are gratuitous sex performances, which he knows isn't true. He knows his citizens are just a bunch of scared sheep. That somehow, if a man dresses up as a woman, that leads to gender confusion and pedophilia. I don't know how those two things relate. It just seems like a lot of, flippity flop BS. But the conversations we're having right now, I can't believe I'm having this conversation, but I am. Just all the same pony show instead of focusing on real things like, I don't know, income inequality, affordable health care, climate change, affordable housing, and all that stuff. We are instead of focusing on drag queens reading a book to children in a public library. I don't know about you all, but I'm a little bit exhausted of constantly having these conversations. And I'm constantly tired of turning on the news and seeing people get their panties in a damn twist over things that do not harm anyone. And I'm going to fight back against it, but I feel like there's energy that I could focus mine on. Just feel a little bit frustrated. That's all. I'm going to take a break and take some meditative time because this type of stuff just, burns me. So Jordan, please take over for me before I go on another rant.
Well, this is clearly just a smokescreen to prevent actually having to govern on anything important. We are taking action to address the scourge of drag queens reading books because that's what is threatening in schools. Definitely not guns. Definitely not the gun that a kid brought in and shot their teacher. What was it last week? The week before? I mean, my kid had a gun pulled in their classroom this week, but no, it's fine because a drag queen wasn't there, right? That's what is important. It's just completely ridiculous. But it's almost it's worse than that because it's part of the culture war, and it's not merely a smokescreen, but it's also a deliberate way to other people because it's very easy to paint someone that you've never interacted with as malicious and terrible and degraded or whatever. It's easy to say that drag queens are sexualizing children and they're grooming them if you've never actually seen a man wearing a dress and makeup reading one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish to a bunch of kids. That's if you just were there and saw it, it would clearly not be a problem. So we have to ensure that they don't see it so that we can make it a problem, because that's the kind of thing that sells. That's the kind of thing that gets people riled up. That's the kind of thing that gets us elected, right? And that's all this is. It's a complete, it's nonsense made to get a bunch of scared people more scared so that they'll continue to put them in power. And that's all it is. And that's all I have to say about that, Cynthia.
You took all the words out of my mouth, Jordan. Yeah, it's fear mongering. It really is fear mongering. I was just even thinking about I was just thinking about specifically plays in the park and also in other parts of our different municipalities and townships, and how people would dress up to play characters in order for them to give their monologues, soliloquies, things of that nature. And when I think of drag story time, that's all I think about. You have folk dressing up, reading stories to children, and it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And then you have like right wing Christian nationalists who are saying, oh my goodness, they're going to over sexualize children. And that's exactly what is not happening here. I wrote down this portion of the article when it says that GOP Representative Kevin West said that we have a lot of laws on the books that prohibit certain activities in public spaces. And with everything that we've been seeing in the last few years on the subject, I think that's why you're seeing a lot of bills like this. And this is the reasoning that he gave concerning the bill to stop the sexualization of children, specifically targeting Drag Queen Story Hour as a sexually orientated event. I just like to point out for the record that they never presented any evidence that these drag story times are sexually oriented events. These are people dressed, cosplay, costume, things of that nature, telling a story to children. That's it. Full stop. That's all. You have people dressed up to tell stories to children. And for them to target this. And Jordan, I want to point out something that you wrote in your notes, and also something you just mentioned, that they have time to craft bills to stop drag queens from telling stories to children in a public library, but we can't figure out how to stop the overabundance of gun violence in our communities. We can't stop mass shootings, even though that America has the largest amount of mass shootings, especially among children in the entire developed world. So I don't understand, and this is a conversation that I specifically want to have with a person that is who has this particular sentiment that we need to stop these different things, and their legislators, that this is something that they need to focus on rather than protecting children from, I don't know, dying from a gun. And people who just happen to come into different places unauthorized, especially in schools, and decided just to spray down children. Like, I mean, like, to be honest, like, I have a 1-year-old. If there was a drag story time in my neighborhood, I'm damn sure taking him. Like, here, have a story, because I'd rather them tell you the story than me, because I'm tired, because you keep me up at night. But Cindy, because like I tell him, I can go on a rant for days. I like to give final thoughts. Cindy, I'll go for you, and then Helen, and then Jordan round us out. Thank you.
Yeah. What you said just triggers something in my mind that I didn't think about previously. It's that this idea that a drag queen reading a story is a sexualized event, and that's funny because we keep saying, the normal people, we keep saying that sex and gender are two different things, and they keep showing us that they don't understand the difference, and and so that's what struck me. But beyond that, yeah, that this kind of law is what manufactured anger looks like. The entire political platform of the GOP is based on that. They don't have any political agenda anymore. It's been like this for quite a while now, but since Trump, it's basically the only thing they have. This culture war that Jordan was talking about. They have no platform, no political agenda, just grab as much power as possible. And since they believe that social media engagement translates into vote and it hasn't, then that's what they do now. They just trying to create a problem that doesn't exist, because no drag artist has ever harmed a child during such an event. And we were talking about the Catholic Church earlier. Let's not get into that. If you want to make a law to protect children, that's probably where you should go. And
Cindy, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was about to say, if you wanted to allude to that, I'm just saying I missed that part. Like, you want to talk about somebody doing an overly sexualized event. Let's just talk about our previous segment. I'm just saying. Continue.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pathetic. It's cowardly. It just shows how politics in the U.S. Are damaged at the moment. When one of the two parties only kicks down people and doesn't propose anything, the country itself is in danger. Helen, I think it's your turn.
So yes, to quote Shakespeare, who had plays of men dressing up as women, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. And that is a whole lot of stink, because not only is this going after just educating children by hearing a fun story by someone dressed up, this is causing librarians to receive threats. It's causing people actually feeling scared for their own lives. There's been a whole bunch of stuff online about librarians talking about receiving death threats, people coming into the libraries and screaming at them, saying that they're groomers, harming children. So this isn't just Wes proposing a bill that we're kind of like, this is really stupid. This is actually having an effect not only on the drag queens that are just want to go read a story to children and do something fun and wonderful. On the other side of it, it is causing people that are just going to work every day to be threatened and to be scared for their lives. So it really bothers me when people are focusing on the wrong things, because I certainly don't want to get threatened and feel like my life is in danger. And as Cynthia pointed out, we're like there's bigger fish to fry with like gun violence. And this all relates into fear tactics and people not focusing on the right things. So I'm very disheartened about where things are going. And yes, I'm going to fight against it because I think it's ridiculous and I want people to feel safe and protected. But it's like we've risen some kind of insanity and I'm not sure what to do about it. So I'm going to take a breather. Jordan, please go ahead. Give me some thoughts. Give me some hope. I want some hope, y'all.
if you, like we said this, if you want to know where to direct your efforts, it's easy. Like if you actually want to know where the actual threats, it's not like this is something we don't look at. People collect statistics on this. This is known. This is something you can Google up. And if you just Google up what the #1 cause of death for children in America is, it's guns. That's just empirical fact. And nowhere on that list is drag queens. So like, I don't know what else there is to say. Like, obviously this has nothing to do with child safety, and more than not helping children, it's actively harming not just children, but innocent people. Like you said, it is a law with no benefit and all costs. So yeah, it's insane. Literally insane. That's
yeah, I agree. It's insane. I believe that it was like a fine to up to $20,000 in jail time. That's what they're proposing. And just to reiterate something that Jordan said, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the last segment, is that, fun fact, no child, I'll repeat that again, no child has been harmed physically by a drag queen during drag story hours. I just want to repeat that one more time. The no child has been harmed physically by a drag queen during drag story hours. If they were in mass, the GOP would be shoving it down our throats. And with that being said, we are going to round out our runaway train. But before we do, I just want to remind you that are watching us, dear viewer and listener, that you can become a member of the channel for as little as 99 cents a month. So click the join button below the video. This will give you access to special chat emojis. Also, we have a brand new store. Well, it's not brand new, but it's new-ish. Like if you smell it, it still has that, brand new store smell because we package it and continue to spray it every week when we mention it. So if you want to smell it and purchase things, please visit tiny.cc/merch ACA to get your favorite items like t-shirts, hoodies, and coffee mugs. You can check out new items like beanies, phone cases, and tote bags. All ACA shows feature a special limited edition item each month. So please make sure to check out our store for NP, which means nonprofits, by the way, and merch from the other shows on the ACA. And with that being said, let's go ahead and go to our very last segment, which is a looking back.
Looking back.
Oh, it's me, big on the screen. How wonderful. Well, this particular looking back is entitled The High Price of Being a Black Atheist. It is from NPR WBEZ Chicago with Michel Martin on 2/10/2012. So this particular story was a interview between Michel Martin and also Alex Jules. Alex Jules is an activist and a prominent atheist, and he was talking about specifically creating community at that particular time period for people who happen to be Black, like me, who also happen to be agnostic atheists and also doubters, free thinkers, critical thinkers, and the like. And I really enjoy actually reading their back and forth, and I can definitely relate to it, even when it comes to my story. And one of the things that I've said that it actually hit home to me because it mirrored my own story and coming to terms with being an atheist and changing my worldview on humanism. And one thing that struck me when this story actually hit is when Alex Jules mentioned the social cost. He talks about that a lot in this article of being an African American and also being an atheist. His social cost was sacrificing his relationship with his mother. That is not uncommon with African Americans no longer having a relationship with their family because they no longer have a belief in God. And I am going to stop right there because I really want to encourage people from actually reading this particular art, story, especially when we're talking about Black History Month in of itself. And we have a long line of Black free thinkers in American society and abroad. But the thing about it is that when we're talking about Black History Month in itself, we usually hear like mostly theist leaders like Dr. King, like Malcolm X, and the like, who actually represented their particular religions as they did activism work. But another thing that is often overlooked is that there were also people who happened to be irreligious, non-religious, agnostic, and atheists that were very much so involved in movements for social change. And with that, I am going to head it on to Cindy Plaza. And then I would love to hear your take when you read this story.
So, ever since I started my channel and began interacting with Americans, one thing that puzzled me a lot was the way Christianity is so ingrained into Black culture when that same religion hurt that community so much for such a long time. So from my point of view, anything that can help mitigate this harm is welcome, and helping the people who live the religion to feel a sense of community, that's a major step, because we say that very often on this channel. We say that we are social beings, but we are also very tribal by nature, and it's very hard for us to live a group of people that look like us, that feel like us, and that we feel we are part of, at least partially, if we don't believe in God anymore. But so it's hard to leave this group if we don't know that we have something to hang on to on the other side. So at the beginning of the interview, Alex Jules is asked, "What is humanism, by the way? Why not just say atheist?" And so he explained the difference. I don't need to explain it. We all know what it is. And I thought, and it was the same idea behind Greaves that we talked about earlier. Maybe there's a clue here for us atheists. If we want to build a strong community, maybe we should do it under the banner of humanism and not atheism. Maybe it will work better, and we can bring us a stronger message. Because, as you said, Cynthia, atheist also is a very triggering word in the US, and humanism is much less so. So maybe that's how we should go as well.
Yeah. What struck me when I was reading this was the idea of intersectionality, which some people in the audience may not be familiar with. It's the idea that the intersection of multiple identities can have unique struggles that may not be shared or can be exacerbated from the individual ones. So, like being an atheist in America can come with some social costs, it can come with some challenges. Being Black in America definitely has challenges, and then you put the two of them right, exactly. Newsflash, in case anybody like has been in a coma since the 50s, and but being both together compounds those troubles. It makes you marginalized among a marginalized group, right? And I think that's part of why this ad campaign is so important, because a quote that really stood out to me that Alex said was, on the other side, we're seeing a swell of people that are connecting and saying, "Thank you for doing this. Until now, I felt alone." And that's the purpose of the ads. He said he wanted to tell people that there are people out there. I think as atheists, it can sometimes, even those of us who used to be religious, we can sometimes forget how important religion is in building community. It's like if you go to a new town and you're part of religion, you just go to the church and boom, instant community, right? And though those communities can be problematic, it's still something that you lose when you leave the religion. And so, like Cindy was saying, that's something that we as non-believers really need to work at, building that community so we can make people feel welcome and give them, make it easier for them to take the step of accepting, where they are, so they can, be at peace with themselves, and just ease the pain of an already, it's painful enough to have to deconvert and let go of something that was probably very important to you, and we can really ease that pain if we make sure to embrace non-believers that are coming out. So I think that this ad campaign is a great idea for that reason. But I'd like to hear, Helen, how what this article meant to you.
What I really took away from this article was not only his own struggle talking about being an out Black atheist in Texas, which I got to give props, because that has to be a long uphill battle. And not only facing the racism prejudice of just being a Black person existing, but also facing some stigmatism within the Black community of becoming an atheist. I can't imagine what that is like. But he didn't. But also didn't seem to want to focus on the negatives. He brought up a lot of stuff about humanism, which I really appreciate, because we all know that we lack a belief, but I'm always on the side of like, well, are you being a good person? Are you being kind? Are you helping your fellow, Homo sapien? And he did a lot of emphasis on that, about how activism isn't only talking about of being a skeptic and dismantling bad ideas and bad beliefs, but also dismantling your thought process and how you perceive things and being a more open and kind person. So I really did appreciate this about this article, because I tend to forget these things, because those of us at the ACA, we're all, chummy, and we joke around, we care about each other, and we're always like, okay, as long as you're not, a butthead, you're cool. And we all tend to get along really with one another. And there's a lot of diverse people here. And I have to remind myself that I live in a very positive bubble. And there's a lot of people out there that are doing activism and being the face of, some groups that are still marginalized, and being, a marginalized person. And on top of that, being an atheist is, something that I really admire, because yes, I'm a queer person, but I'm also white, and I live, and I'm an American, so I have a little bit of privilege going on in my favor. It's dumb, but I recognize, the pools that I swim in. But I really appreciated in this article, he made that emphasis that we need to be kind to each other. So I really appreciated that. So, Cynthia, let's bring it back to you, honey.
Thanks. Yeah, one of the things that I was just like pondering is something that Cindy mentioned when it came to the harm of Christianity, specifically on African Americans. Yet you still have a large portion of African Americans um, who happen to be theistic, especially Christian. And one of the things, it wasn't just because of indoctrination. In actuality, African Americans happen to find some agency being able to run their own institutions, and they were able to do it under the religious guise of Christianity. I remember specifically, I just read a book. I've been catching up on my reading lately, and it's been great. And I started my new job later on in February, so it's going to be very interesting with my reading being kind of diminished. But in the book, it talked about how you had, even during slavery times, predominantly African American congregations coming together in order for them to be able to run their own particular organizations, institutions, and actually create community. So this is something that happened for a very, very long time, despite at the same time congruently running a way to use propaganda specifically from the Bible to justify slavery in the African American community. So I think that that's something that we have to consider when we're constantly talking about why we have such a prevalency of Christianity within our community, and also why the social cost is so high when African Americans specifically leave that community. I was lucky. I did not necessarily have to, find a way to justify myself to my family because I no longer believe. They just kind of accepted it. I got like some backlash, but it wasn't like what other people have like experienced as they went along. I have very close friends who talk about how because they left religion, they left their church and things of that nature, how they got a lot of backlash, from their family, and being communicated in some ways because they no longer were part of that community. So I think that that's something that's very important to understand. And I think that's one of the reasons why having, Alex Jones, I'm sorry, not Alex Jones, but Alex Jules, not Alex Jones at all, but Alex Jules talking about, creating community in African Americans with poor African Americans who are actually coming out on faith. Same thing that, the Black non-believers has done as well. And, and unfortunately, if you're thinking that's a Freudian slip, maybe, I don't know, but but definitely most likely because let's just blame it on my ADHD and also my lisp, okay? But no, but like, community is extremely important to any human being, right? And this is the reason why even, amongst LGBTQIA plus people, we have chosen communities because that's how we thrive. That's how we build systems. That's how we build institutions. That's how we survive. So, communities are extremely important. And I think that like when Alex was definitely trying to say that creating community and also supporting community, even amongst African Americans who happens to be agnostic, atheists, doubters, non-believers, and the like is extremely important, even amongst those who happen to be, who still call themselves religious. The person who actually organized like what we know as Black History Month now, when this particular which is starts today, is Carter G. Woodson. And even though that he continued to call himself Christian, he had a lot of odds with the church in of itself because of their justification for slavery and because of all the other things that happened as far as like under the religious guise towards African Americans in the United States. So all of those things have to make, we need to make room for them in order for those particular ideas to grow. And also for, an already marginalized community that I happen to belong to have a safe space so that they can be non-believers without necessarily getting backlash. And then we can just go ahead and just round up into our final thoughts since we're in the very last throes. If Helen, if you can with you go in your final thoughts, and Cindy, and then Jordan, and then we can get on out of here. So go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with the future, which is so as we go forward in the future, people like Alex Jules and other people that are in this in the atheist community that don't look like me, don't speak like me, have different point of views. We need as much diverse people in this community as possible because it has been a white sausage fest for a while and I'm kind of over it, y'all. And it's really wonderful to see people that are skeptics and humanists and they want to get their voice out, and seeing people, even though they're going to BS that shouldn't be facing, but they're going to, because that's the world we live in. For them to be speaking out about these issues is so deeply important, and like we're talking about some crap tonight that's very distressing and upsetting, but I always look at the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm always looking for some positives, and people like Alex and other activists that are speaking against bad ideas, to become skeptical and to become more of a humanist gives me, like a little bit of like reprieve from the crazy. So that's something I am deeply appreciative for. So I am out on that.
Cynthia, you talked about justifying slavery, and I keep getting this this memory of a video I saw. I think it was 2020 or 2019. There was a discussion about removing a statue, and there was this white guy with a Confederate flag, and a black man talking to him, and so they were arguing about history, about my legacy, about those kind of things, and the white guys kept saying that his legacy is like his identity and his family and everything like that, and his ancestors were farmers, and so the black man says, well, who was working in your farm? And and the white guy says, well, my parents, do you know how much a slave cost at the time?
Wow.
So as long as you have people, especially in the south of the U.S., thinking like this, Black people will desperately need a sense of community, and so if those who live faith need one, then we should help them build one as much as we can.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where if a Christian tells me unequivocally that slavery is wrong, I'm actually surprised. I would think that in 2023 that would be an uncontroversial thing to say, but evidently not. And I thought it was uncontroversial, and I grew up in the capital of the Confederacy. But man, anyway, that's a whole nother thing. I think it's great that we're seeing more voices in our community from marginalized segments of our community. Like you said, it's been white male dominated for too long, and I think that it's important for us to broaden our perspective so that we can be welcoming to the broadest number of people, so we can be that open door to new skeptics.
Indeed, I totally agree. And even though like Black people who, especially like me, who have descended from chattel slavery, have like their history steeped in such things, we also have a great history that we have created right here in America that that include activists, that include thinkers, that include scientists, that include, people who have traversed all portions of society to create culture right here. And one of the things that we definitely have created was a culture of people who happen to be free thinkers. I'm one of them. Won't you join? Come on down. And with that being said, we just have some final announcements. So please join our fine social media outlets. You can find most of the nonprofit hosts on the Atheist Community of Discord by going to tiny.cc/ACD Discord, and on Facebook at tiny.cc/FBNP. And if you would like to support the show, you can do so by becoming a Patreon at tiny.cc/PatreonNP. And until the 20th, I believe, if you find yourself actually on shopping at Amazon, you can support the Atheist Community of Austin by shopping at smile.amazon.com and selecting the Atheist Community of Austin as a beneficiary. And please be sure to use the link to help out the ACA. We really do appreciate it. And we value your feedback, y'all. So please tell us what you like and what you don't like in the comments, or email us at nonprofits@atheist-community.org. And also visit the Atheist Community of Austin's official website at atheist-community on the latest. Oh, I'm sorry, atheist-community.org. How did I forget the org? My bad. So do that on the latest of what's been happening, and feel free to contact the ACA at tv@atheist-community.org. And with that being said, guys, I want to thank our fellow hosts that we had today, Helen Greene, Cindy Plaza, and Jordan I Doubt It. Thank you for actually being here and actually putting in your thoughts. And with that said, thank you everybody for tuning in to this particular day. We are out again. Happy Black History Month. Learn something Black history, y'all, because Black history is American history. And with that said, have a good evening or afternoon. Bye-bye.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.